Given this wonderful privilege of introducing the guest for today, I don't know why the moderator has requested that, because I usually don't do this. Could also be that that's because Mr. Shekarri used to be my boss at some point in time. So it will be a good honor and privilege to introduce him to everyone and probably just announce him to some others, because I can see quite a number of his team on this call this morning. Mr. Sheyin Shekarri is a man of many hearts. He holds a master's in business administration, I believe, from Coventry University. He is also an alumni of the prestigious Lagos Business School. He has a wide experience in different sectors of the economy, whether real estate, telecommunications, and of course, like we all know, the agricultural sector, spanning across both agrarian agriculture as well as animal ranching. He's been the MD of Integrated Dairies Limited, I believe, since 2008, when he started as an acting CEO and executive director, but I believe he became a substantive CEO in 2014. And since then, he's led the company through a lot of transitioning. He's made some milestone in the Nigerian agricultural space. There's no way you can talk about dairy or animal ranching, large ruminants in Nigeria without reference to Mr. Sheyin Roy Shekarri. And it is with that small and brief intro that I welcome you, Mr. Sheyin Shekarri, to this conversation. We're hoping to learn a lot from your journey, the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to hear it all. And we're hoping that whatever we hear today is going to help our various audiences to, and I use the word various audiences because it's not just today's audience that gets to listen to this. Other people get to access the recording. So we're very hopeful that the learnings from this session will be very valuable to help business leaders in their own personal journeys of transitioning and transforming their businesses. Over to you, Odabo, and thank you and welcome, Mr. Shekarri.
Thank you, Jumoke. Thank you, Odabo, and happy to be here. Good morning.
Great to have you again, Mr. Sheyin. And thanks, Jumoke, for that lovely introduction. Good morning, everybody on the call. My name is Odabo Ejimodo, and I have the privilege of hosting this webinar today. If you're an entrepreneur, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're looking to build a legacy family business or any business at all, the Triad Masterclass is the place to be. And today we have Mr. Sheyin to share his story with us. So, Mr. Sheyin, the first question I have for you is I'd like to know a bit about your background. How did you get into this space? Was it accidental? Was it planned? What's your story been from the beginning?
Okay, so after my master's, when I came back into Nigeria, I worked. I was into various things. I'd always been interested in business, all kinds of business. When I was in university, I had a bar in University of Jos called Penthouse. When I was doing my MBA, I would take $100 flights to New York, buy clothes, come back, sell them to students in school. When I finished my MBA, or in between my university and MBA, I was running a cyber cafe then in Lagos, and that was the in thing. So I've been more or less going in and out of various things, which is a bad thing, but maybe we'll get to that later on. But anyway, I came back. I was involved in the property business. I was in the family trawling business. We had 3 trawlers. We would go out, catch fish and shrimp. We would export the shrimp to Europe, and we would sell the fish here in Nigeria. And along the line, I moved to Abuja, got married, moved to Abuja. and continued my own private business there up until 2008, when family approached me that they would need me to sort of take some kind of role within the company in Jos. Now I'm referring to Integrated Dairies Limited, being that there was nobody, they felt there was nobody who would be as committed as a family member, if I can put it that way. So I took up the challenge, moved from Abuja to Jos, and that's how I got involved in Integrated Dairies. I mean, I've always been there on the sidelines since the acquisition of the company, but not actively involved in the management. Okay. So that's my journey up until when I started, yes.
A few interesting things you just mentioned. Your entrepreneurship spirit, I think, is an important thing for anyone, especially in the early adult stage, to have that encounter. Yeah. So hearing that, I'm not surprised.
Oh, sorry. And one area I missed out was actually what made me move back to Nigeria.
Okay.
So after my MBA, I was going to work there. I went through multiple interviews. I was called all the like Arthur Andersons, the JP Morgans, and so on. I went for all their interviews, but for some reason, maybe I wasn't good enough. I wasn't employed. So while I was still trying to get a job, I was working in was it Safeway? I was working in Safeway as a security guard, and and I think the most interesting thing there is you're actually looking for somebody to catch as a thief. That would make your day. If not, just standing.
That was the goal. That was the KPI.
That was the goal. But one day, my the head of our course came into the store to shop, and he saw me standing. I was like, "Oh, are you working here?" I said, "Yes." So he just said hello and he moved on. And in my mind, I was like, "Okay, here I have a degree in accounting. I have a master's degree now, and I'm here working as a security guard." And I thought, no, I need to go back home. And I also looked at, okay, what people that work in the UK, JP Morgan, for instance, was as a graduate, they were paying the highest when it comes to entry-level pay. And that was £25,000 per annum. Now, by the time you remove your 40% tax, you pay all your licenses and everything, what you even have to feed on is less than 10,000 for the year. And I thought, no, I think I'd rather go back home. So within a month, I packed my things and I was back home and started business. So yeah, that was my journey here.
So what I hear you say is the defining moments. And across all the different guests we've had on this platform, there's always that defining moment when someone makes that shift, makes a decision that seems to shape the trajectory of their lives and businesses. So I think you're already in the leagues of the greats, obviously, right? So you mentioned that the company was acquisition. I always thought Integrated Dairy was started as a new company. The family that started it on its own. Can you tell us a bit more about the acquisition journey you just mentioned about?
So this was in early, maybe 2002. And my father got the information that Friesland Campina wanted to sell a farm of theirs in Jos. Now, he had always been interested in agriculture. And so this was a fantastic opportunity for him. Now, in that excitement, he went into the negotiations, acquired the company from them. They were happy to let it go because for them, it was more of a demonstration farm. It was more of showing government that we're backward integrated. It wasn't really a business for them where they were out to make money. And I think we also didn't factor that, or he also didn't factor that when he was going through the acquisition. So by the time we took over the business, or he took over the business, He didn't realize that there was a there was a debt there of about 200 million, which nobody.
Back then, wow, this is like 20 plus years ago. Correct?
Yes, yes.
200 million. Wow. How did
So
it bounce back from that? Most people will
it
run
took
away from such.
it took years. It took almost 10 years
Wow.
to come out of that. But eventually we did. Eventually we did. So that's how the business was acquired. So we acquired it together with all the products they were producing at that time, which was farm fresh yogurt, farm fresh stirred yogurt. So the drinking yogurt, the stirred yogurt, and cheese and butter at that time.
Okay. Just to give some insight to our viewers today, can you tell us a bit more about all the businesses and products you have? Farm fresh yogurt is my best, right? So just be sure everybody knows what the products are. Can you just share a bit about the different businesses and
okay so we have farm fresh dairy products that covers our drinking yogurt in different flavors: strawberry, mango, pineapple, banana, vanilla, natural, and we also have fresh milk. We also have stirred yogurt in cups, small cups. Those come in 3 flavors: natural, strawberry, and pineapple.
Okay.
We have Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is in 2 categories, both the sweetened and the unsweetened. We have Refresh, which is a slightly more affordable brand, and in the same flavors as the farm fresh drinking yogurt.
Okay.
And on the Greek side, we do quite a number of things there. We do consulting in terms of helping people set up their own farms. We provide artificial insemination services. We sell semen. We represent one of the largest semen producers in the world, called Worldwide Sires. They're located in the US. We also have sell animals, bulls, and also female animals for those that want to breed or improve their herd. And we also recently started a logistics arm of the business, which we provide third-party logistics to other people that may want to transport their either vegetables, chicken, meat, and so on. Yeah. So those are the different activities we're into. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheyin. And your factory is based in Jos, correct?
Yes, we're located in Jos, Plateau State.
Okay.
It's probably, if you want to keep animals, maybe cattle for milk, that's probably the best place to have animals. I mean, the other places like Mambila or Obudu that have the cooler temperatures. But I think being closer to everyone, a place that's closer to everyone, I would say, is Jos, Plateau State. Yes.
Okay. I assume, obviously, all this starts 20 years ago. So you've moved from the cattle business to agriculture, generally, manufacturing, and basically cold chain logistics.
Yes.
Was that always the plan, or like most entrepreneurs, one thing starts, another opportunity opens up, you go into that opportunity because you've literally done your backward integration end to end?
Yes.
So was that always the plan, or it just seemed to evolve?
That wasn't the plan. That is how we acquired the business, if I can put it that way. So Friesland was already farming for the animals. They were milking the animals. They were producing the various products that they had at that time from the milk they were getting from the animals. And they were also selling the products to themselves. So when we acquired the business, it was more of adopting some of those things, getting rid of what we didn't want, and improving on the logistics side of the business. So really, it was a model that was already in play that we just took up and sort of improved on it. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, I know generally what people say is you shouldn't do everything yourself, you should outsource and so on. But what we've also found out with experience is that in Nigeria, probably not the same in other countries, people are out to maximize their profits, if I can put it that way. So when you outsource critical operations to some of these companies, you end up losing out. And I can give an example where one of our sister companies wanted to move certain vegetables to Lagos, and logistics company approached us that they would be ready to carry out that duty for us. After intense negotiations in terms of the cost, in terms of do you have insurance and all of that, for that's goods in transit insurance and all that, we got a yes for everything. So we agreed to give them the product. But on getting to Lagos, when the doors were open, everything was rotten.
Oh my.
And we found out that immediately the driver left the farm with the products, he turned off the cooling to save cost. So by the time the items got to Lagos, they were all bad. So this is a classic example of where if you put everything on if you depend on someone else, you can be disappointed. I'm not saying that it's the same for all things, but I think you have to be careful. If it's critical to you, then you might have to do it yourself. Not the best, but it just depends on the environment we're in. For us and what we do, this is what works. So we tend to do everything ourselves for now.
I think you mentioned something very critical. I like the way you contrasted it with other markets. Nigeria is really not like other markets. The norm is outsource things. You are not, but it really doesn't work for every industry, especially our Nigeria, where we find ourselves. Doing business in Nigeria is hard. It's Herculean, right? And I like the way you mentioned that challenge. This is a logistic challenge that was one of the early things you encountered as a business. There are other many problems. I want to just focus on maybe 2 or 3 of those challenges, right? So another one I would look at now is American tariffs. Looking at what is happening in America and globally now with the trade wars, there seems to be several challenges that will affect the African market and possibly the Nigerian market. I think 20 years ago, possibly this was the same thing Friesland was seeing, and they decided to sell off the business, which is the norm. Focus on your focus, specialize. So they sold off that one. So now in the industry, in Nigeria, we find ourselves now. We need to start having lots of local players creating and generating solutions and products that will help your business and other businesses. Which areas do you think young entrepreneurs can go into now, especially in your industry, that would also help you save costs and prepare you, save you from the challenge of American tariffs, which is going to come sooner or later, right? So, what do you think?
Well, I think we need to focus inwards. Whatever it is that they choose to do, I would recommend food, because anything you do in the, the Nigerian population is increasing. We're over 200 million now. It's just going to keep increasing every, I think it's every, we double almost every 20 years or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but food security is an important thing. And if the numbers keep growing, there is massive opportunity when it comes to agriculture. So I would advise the young ones who have the passion for it, because a lot of people tend to go into industries where they're looking at the next person. Oh, that person is making money. I think I should go into that too.
Or let that person do the work for me and I get the returns. That kind of farm crowding thing.
Yes. Looking at there's money in poultry, or people are making, let me go into poultry. There's a lot that goes with it. If you don't have the passion, please don't go into it. But if you do have that passion for agriculture, I think there's a big market there. People, I think if it's advice for the young ones, I think they need to be patient. Whether it is agriculture, whether it is something else, they need to be patient. It takes time. They need to be focused. They need to eat and breathe that business continuously. And also, when I talk about being patient and focused, I remember we had a graduate trainees at some point in time. And I remember just trying to get to know them. What's your name? What were you doing before you got to IDL? And one of them said, oh, that he gave his name, everything. He goes, oh, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I do this, I do that, I do that. I said, well, maybe being a serial entrepreneur is not really a very good thing, because what that tells me is that you are failing in everything you are doing. And you keep starting a new business all the time. Yes. So, and I can relate to it because I was one. I mean, I've gone into so many things early days from uni and so on. So I know if I had focused on one particular item, maybe I would have been far away from where I am right now. So I would say focus is very important. That's on the agri space. There are so many opportunities there. If they're also going into agri, they need funding. Funding is important. The right funding is very, very important. You can't go and get loans of 30% that you need to pay back in 1 year, 2 years time, and you think you're going to achieve anything in agriculture. You probably need to, I don't know whether single-digit loans are still feasible in Nigeria anymore, but somewhere between that 15%, you can get 15% loans if you're able to, and for the right tenure, I would say anything from 15 years. I don't know if we've not been able to get 15 years so far. Maybe some new packages, loan packages from some of the various organizations might come up soon where we're able to get into that. But the longer the tenure, the better. Okay. The longer the tenure, the better.
Since you're on funding now, how has it been early days and today? Accessibility to funding, the interest rates. I assume they were better in the early days, but it's still a challenge many businesses face. How do you navigate that terrain?
Okay, well, using integrated dairies as an example, unless you have access to a big purse, you need funding. You need some kind of loan, whether it is from the bank or whether it is equity for your business to grow. Our business was stagnant. Remember, I told you about the 200 million naira hole that we got in. It was stagnant for a while. It was stagnant for 10 years. 10 years, we were going back to the chairman, that's the founder then, of trying to, each month, each year would go back just to get money to pay salaries or buy critical things that were important, because the money was not enough. We did not have that access to funds. But then in 2010, we were able to get the CACS loans from CBN. That's the Commercial Agricultural CACS is a I'm trying to remember, commercial agricultural credit scheme from CBN. And with that, we're able to now grow the business to the point where the business was self-sustaining. We didn't have to go back to the founder for any more money. We were able to get at a good interest rate. I believe we were able to, the initial one we got was 8%. So we had that loan at 8% and it was for 7 years. So I think that was what propelled Ideal, and from there we started to grow. We started to grow in revenues. We started to grow in product variants. So funding is key. Getting the right fund, very important, especially for the kind of business that you're doing. If you're, for instance, into trading, you don't necessarily have to get a struggle for a single digit or whatever the banks are giving you, you're going to pass that cost to the consumer anyway. And you're what's it called? You're not keeping that for a year. Most likely your goods come in, you sell, and you've paid back the money. So I think it's different for every industry. You just need to look at where you are and know the kind of funding that works for you.
Okay. What I also hear you say at the back of that story is you have to have some level of success. You have to have a track record, because after 10 years, many people will give up, throwing the towel. But because you had a track record, that's why they were able to still invest in the company and give the necessary finances to catalyze the growth you're experiencing now. Because it's in our climate, it's easy to give up. And you can see that with the level of jackpot syndrome that we're having. So talents are living every day. Nigeria is hard, the country is hard, and all that and all that. But you stuck to it, and now you're still growing. Which leads me to my next question. How have you managed your talent pool? For you to build such a massive business across 3-4 industries, you need people to run this. And I know your employee base is in the hundreds. So it's not easy to manage such a number of people. How have you been able to manage talents and keep them while you grow the business?
That's a tough one. And I think that's probably, if you, I mean, when I talk with other CEOs, other people running their own business, and you're just going into that one single challenge that you have, it's always people. It's not that the people that are not there, the recent challenge is actually retaining them. Now I'm talking in general, it doesn't just apply to integrated dairies, is what I've seen all around, what it applies to us too. Because of the economy that we're in right now, most people cannot meet their needs, if I can put it that way. And because everything has gone down so fast, it's difficult for most businesses to keep up with the rate of decline. So it's impossible for a business to say, oh, the dollar has gone up by so amount, you've lost so spending power, therefore we're going to increase your salary by so much to be able to cope with that. That business is also facing increased cost. Their revenues are going down. There is no way they can maintain, should I say, that salary increase for staff to be able to cope with the rising cost of things. So on the employee side, very few are able to see that and also know that, look, this challenge I'm facing in this company really applies to almost all other companies, except for maybe the multinationals. So there's always that thinking that it's better, things are greener on the other side. So it is difficult to keep such people who are already feeling that pinch. It's almost like this company is not doing enough for me, so I need to move. Now, to keep such people, it's not by increasing salary. Yes, salary is something that you need to do, but every company can only do it to the extent in which they can increase their cost. What we tend to do is engagement. We're always looking at different intervals. There are what do you call it? Surveys that go out, trying to understand the pain points, trying to understand how we can improve things, trying to understand what will make them more productive. So those things, that constant engagement is going on. You try to put the right environment in place so that people are comfortable with their work. You try and make sure that people have all the work tools that they need. Right now, everybody is looking at partial work. So basically working outside the office, having some days where you can work at home to also cut down on the cost. So there's so many things that you need to look at, and you need to have a very proactive HR department, because at the end of the day, that responsibility lies with them. And if your HR department is very proactive and that engagement is there, you would retain. But like I said, right now, things are not normal. Things are not normal. The current youth want to work from home. They want a very relaxed working environment compared to the older generation. So there also has to be that balance. That balance there. The people that want to come to work every day, go to the office, then there are those that no, I can, this work you're giving me, I can do some of it at home. Why do I need to come every day? I need to save money and all. So you have to create that environment too, where you're able to satisfy both sides. So it's a balancing act, if I can put it that way.
Okay, I like the way you put it.
Of course, there are other things like trainings and so on that you have to do. You have to show your staff that there's a career path. You have to show that there's succession planning. You have to show that there's a way. You have to show them that there is the path to the top, so that they can see that trajectory. But for us, it's constantly work in progress. You are constantly trying to improve. Besides maybe multinationals that have been there for some of them hundreds of years, and these systems are already there. Most Nigerian companies are, should I say, local Nigerian companies are really trying to put this thing in place, and it's a constant work in progress.
I like the way you put it, because honestly, it's a balancing act, right?
Yes.
Work needs to be done. People need to be satisfied. Consumers have to be satisfied. So it's balancing it, reward, compensation, and getting the right talent and retaining the talent too. So thank you for that answer. At this point, I'd like to make a request to our audience. If you have questions or comments you would like to ask or say, please drop them in the comments section. As we continue the interview, after interview, we'll have question and answer session, which will come up in about 10-15 minutes. Okay. All right. So we've spoken about how you started the business, the acquisition, different sectors Curated Dairy plays in internationally and locally. We've mentioned some of the challenges you've gone through as a business. I would like to focus now on 2024. In the history of Nigeria, I think 2024 will be one of those years that everyone will remember. Hopefully the history books will remember too. It was a year full of inflation. Things literally doubled, tripled, quadrupled. Was for 10, I don't know what the word for 10 is, 10-drupled. So how, as a business, did you survive that? Because I know, for instance, I think sugar was about 800 naira or so per kg, and it moved to 10,000 naira, something like that. I'm mixing up the numbers. And so was all the major ingredients you need for your major product, which is yogurt, from flour, I don't know if flour, milk, everything. Prices were just going up and down. It was just, there was inflation, there was everything, food costs went through the roof. How did you manage that from a price perspective? Also from the consumer perspective, how did you manage all that to make sure you still survived that year?
Thank you. Well, 2024 was extremely tough. Pricing. So for us, we sort of saw what was coming during the that's at the end of 2023. And in planning our budget for the 2024 financial year, one of the important things that we did was that we formed our budget on the expectation that, on the assumption that the dollar would go up to 2,000 naira to the dollar.
2,000 naira, that was a really safe assumption. Dollar was about 1.5, if I remember.
At that time, it wasn't even up to 1. I think early 2024. I don't think it was up to 1.5 yet.
It wasn't.
Yes, but I mean, we could see that the way things were going, what was happening within the country, what was happening in terms of exports, imports, all of that. There was no way that dollar would stay at. I think then it was maybe about 1.2 or something like that. That was not yet at 1.5. But if you remember, in 2024, it got up to 1.9.
Yes.
It got up to 1.9. So that was the first thing that we did, just budgeting at 2,000 naira to the dollar. The other thing was monitoring price. So every month we were keeping up with what was happening in terms of our raw materials, in terms of our inputs. And at some point, we had to do a certain very high increase in pricing. I believe we went up by 50% in pricing in 2024. And because of that, we lost about maybe 50% of our volumes because of that price increase. But for us, I think it was more about maintaining quality rather than shortchanging the customer or bringing out substantial, substandard products into the market. So at that point, we had to keep monitoring every price increase and increasing our price in parallel with that price increase. At the same time, trying to stay ahead, because if we do not stay ahead of the price increase, it is impossible for us to buy the required quantity of inputs or stock to maintain production. If you allow the price to go ahead of you, what you will find is you're constantly buying less inputs and you're only able to produce lower quantities. So we had to stay ahead. And in doing that, our price kept on going up. We kept on losing market share because customers could no longer buy what they could buy as they used to. So I think that was the big challenge, but for us, it was important. What we also did, again, was bring out a new brand called Refresh, which was slightly cheaper than the Farm Fresh product, to be able to have something that could cater for that segment, people that could not afford Farm Fresh anymore. There was something else that was just as what's the word, in terms of quality. In terms of quality, it was the same, more or less, as Farm Fresh. We also had to do things like change the packaging and so on to try and bring out something that was cheaper than the packaging used for farm fresh to cut down on the price. But just something interesting also happened by the end of 2024. Even though the packaging, for instance, that we were bringing in for farm fresh, which is the paper pack, I think everybody knows that, what ended up happening is that the plastic, that's the PET bottles that we're using for refresh, and the labels and the cap that you get locally here in Nigeria, ended up being more expensive than the imported one that we're bringing in. So now again, we're forced to look at things again and see how we can reassess this increase in cost, and how we can restructure things to be able to cope with this price increase. So you have to constantly look at your price constantly. Now it's gotten to the point where we do it every, I think it's every month. We're looking at the price increase. We're looking at the pricing of, our inputs, and just seeing whether we need to make an increase or keep it as it is. In this times, that's the only way you can survive. You must monitor your cost and adjust prices appropriately.
I love what you have said, and I was writing as you were saying, talking. So a few points I mentioned is the hedging. You were so proactive to hedge almost double what was currently happening in 2023. You did what one of our guest speakers said, Ugo Dre, the founder of Nairametrics, which was buy now, save later. So by proactively buying your raw materials ahead of time, you saved yourselves a lot of costs. Number three.
Okay, so we didn't really buy ahead of time. That was the plan.
Okay.
The plan was to buy ahead of time and lock down your production costs.
Okay.
Yeah. But we were not able to do that because we didn't have the excess funds to do that.
That is always the problem. That finance is always the problem. We know what to do, but that finance.
Exactly. So that's why we had to keep monitoring constantly what is happening in the market and adjusting price to be able to cope with that.
Yes.
Because
the risk there, which I mean, is a very valid, realistic, that's reality. If you buy now everything and the price now drops the next quarter, now you are now way higher. Your cost of goods is still higher than what you plan. So, yes. So that's being proactive, and you're checking every month on the cost of goods. One thing I like also is that challenges challenge your assumptions, your belief system. So now what you mentioned was your locally became more expensive than internationally. When such challenges come up, you finally realize that what you thought was truth, maybe a particular packaging material, other options now suddenly become viable, right? So I think these challenges, as in hindsight, you can always talk about them, how they helped you, but when you're in it, it's always a problem. But having that calm mind and a system that works and people and talent, I think that's what a few things that you have said that helped you through that time. Thank you for that answer. Have two more questions for you before we go into the group. The first one is governance. Over the years, for you to build such a thing, how has it been for you having sourcing the right people on your board and things like that? What are the key foundation that has helped you build governance across your business?
Okay, so it was 2-3 years ago. The founder of the business decided that for sustainability of the business, we had to improve on our board, should I say, the richness of our board. At that time too, I think there was also a lot of talk about corporate governance and all of that. So we took the step to bring in seasoned personalities into the board of IDL. We had people that had multiple years in the finance space. We have two of them on our board. We have somebody whose area of expertise is actually corporate governance on our board. We have somebody from the sales and marketing space who all her career had been in sales, branding, marketing. She's also on our board. So we brought in different people that could add value through their vast experience to the business. So I think that and the sorry, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, man.
That and the drive to have a business that could stand the test of time and exceed the average in so I know in Nigeria, Nigerian businesses tend to last maybe about 20 years on the average, 25 years on the average. And usually once the founder or the main promoter of the business leaves the business, it tends to go down. So it is also in view of this that he believed that, look, we need to have a strong board, we have to have strong governance that can guide this business beyond his own time, beyond my own time, and just something that can stand the test of time for as long as possible. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I sort of got a bit muddled up in giving my answer. Yeah.
No, I think you said it's importantly getting the right people, the right knowledge, the right experience to make the board richer. I remember having a conversation with a friend who mentioned his visit to a particular business that was struggling. And one thing that was glaring was the caliber of the board members. They were relatively young, relatively short experience. So it was more like an emotional decision that led to the picking of such board members. But so what you have said, for the kind of growth anybody needs, especially for entrepreneurs, you have to have people with versatile, with decades of experience, with influence, financial backing. I think those are important factors to be considered. So thank you for that insight. Lastly, for me is Nigeria. Typically, some people will call yogurt a luxury product, right? And we would not consider yogurt for everyone. I don't believe that, obviously. So what do you think about that? What people say when they talk about yogurt being a luxury brand?
Okay. I think it depends. Well, it depends on who's wearing the shoe. If you have somebody that is sick and has gut issues, I don't think yogurt is luxury at that point. If you have somebody that's into fitness or just wants something nutritious, I'm not sure for that person it is luxury. If we're looking at the price of yogurt, I mean, people are spending millions of naira. I mean, how much is a bottle of Azul in the club? 600,000 naira, and people are buying. So I think luxury is relative. But that said, we on our own part, we also know that people cannot afford what they used to. So for us, we feel and we're working on other products. We feel that we need to bring other products that can cater for people that cannot afford the existing brand. One thing that's important for us is that we will not cut down on quality. And if you are not cutting down on quality, your price cannot go down. Your price will continue to follow that increase that's happening in the inputs. So I feel for us to navigate this area where it's called, we just need to bring out other products that more people can afford, or for more segments of the market, if I can put it that way. And I think that's how we would handle this issue of whether it's luxury or not. I think it's relative, but at the same time, even if we have a product today that is, let's say, 100 naira, it's still going to be a luxury item for some people.
Yes.
So the main thing is target where you feel you want to service and bring out a product that meets the needs of those people in that segment.
Okay. Thank you very much for those insightful answers. I will now open the floor to the questions, and we have a couple of them right here now. So let me look at the first question. Okay. Tosin, can you mute everybody, please? One second, someone's calling. Okay. All right. So the first question we have is from Jumoke. You bought the business and discovered a 20 million naira deficit over 20 years ago. This must have been quite daunting. Did you at any time consider exiting? In retrospect, do you think you would have been setting up the business from scratch? So that's basically two questions. Was there a time you felt like throwing in the towel? One. And would you have done this business from scratch? If you had to go back, would you have started this business from scratch? Without acquisition, start it on your own. I think these are the two questions in one.
Okay, well, starting the business from scratch, answer is no. I think there's an advantage you get from continuing an existing business, especially when it comes to time setup. We're dealing with live animals. You can't just multiply them just like that. You don't just switch off the equipment and all of a sudden you have thousands of animals. It takes time to grow those animals. So no, I think it was wise for us to acquire rather than starting from scratch. In terms of dropping the towel at any point in time, I don't think that thought ever came up in anybody's mind. Both from the previous CEO, myself, the founder of the business. At no time did that ever, I don't think that thought ever crossed anybody's mind, even though we were going through serious hardship at the initial beginning. But it never crossed the minds of anyone. And one of the things, again, that kept us focused was we also knew that there were hundreds of people that were also relying on the business. So to just get up one day and say, oh no, you're shutting down, even though at that point it would have been easier to just carry your money, put it in the bank, and just continue to get your interest than to keep the losses that were going on at that point. So it never crossed our mind, no.
Okay. And I like what you said, 100, it's not just 100 people, it's literally hundreds of families.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's boils down to having the purpose behind every business.
Yeah.
And yes, so thank you for not shutting down. Okay.
And I think that was really, I think we all also got that too from the founder himself, that my father. It wasn't the constant going back to him to get money to pay for salaries and all of that month on month without missing a single month of payment in almost 23 years, in over 23 years. I think there's no way you can give up on something like that. It's not, for that commitment was there to the people, it was there to the business. Nobody else would even have that thought of giving up on the business.
So to everyone, of our wonderful guests today, if you have plans of building a legacy family business, I think this is one of the tenets that must be understood, that you are in for the long haul. Not to, obviously, evolution is part of it. Yeah. The same way you have evolved from one sector to the other and from one product to the other. So I think that's an important tenet. Evolution, not extinction. Not extinction. Let me put it that way. Okay, so thank you for that answer. The other question we have is from KK. It's interesting to see how IDL has navigated through different challenges and wavering storms as they go through each phase. What would be your advice to young entrepreneurs who are facing diverse challenges that affect their businesses, economic security and inflation? I think you've answered that question during the course of our conversation. Even this last question, I think that's pretty much the same answer. The next question, Terry Nwage, from the serial entrepreneurship personal experience and ideal growth transitions, I would like to inquire on when growth transitions should occur, the challenges associated with growth transitions, and lessons learned from the failures encountered. I think interesting question. So in the 23 years, different transition points, one or two main lessons you gleaned from those transitions, be it products, be it sector. What are the major things that influenced that decision for you?
Okay, so major transition points. I think the first one had to do with our packaging. Now, we had a very good product, but that product was not properly represented. So, for instance, you would have products coming in from other countries looking very nice packaging and so on, but the content was not as good as what you had. Meanwhile, you have a product, fantastic content, but the presentation was not good. So for me, I felt we needed to up our game and present our product for what it truly is, so that when people see it, they know, one, they're getting quality just by looking, they're getting quality from the taste of the product, they're getting quality from the nutritional benefits of that product, which is why, for instance, we have absolutely no preservatives in our current products. And we've emphasized on packaging and presentation. So that was the first one. Now, with that particular one, that also cost us. It also cost us a lot, because at that point when we had that change in packaging, we also did 100% price increase. That 100% price increase took our volumes down by 70%, and it took over a year to come out of it. The next point had to do with growing the business. You're stagnant. You can see that you are not going anywhere, and you need to grow that business to the next stage. That was the funding part, where we were going all out looking for how to raise money and so on. We ended up getting our funding from the CACS facility. The next stage I would say that was very important was where we're now looking at continuity of the business, moving the business from more what you would say a one-man business, if I can put it that way, to a business that is self-sustaining, has its own life, can outlive whoever is running it now or whoever owns it now. And that is where corporate governance, getting the right board mix, and so on came into play. So I think that is the area we're currently working on now, trying to improve, trying to ensure that there is sustainability, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question or if I missed something out of it.
No, you did that. I think it's apart from the product marketing, look and feel, and data. I think data also obviously helps you in making those transitions.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, having a good hold on your data, volumes, the values, volume, revenues, and consumer insight, touching the consumer and hearing what they want and what they don't want, what matters to them. Is the packaging important, or is the product is what they're looking for? So yeah, those insights, it takes a very sharp eye, keen eye to notice those things. Yeah. Okay. So next question is from, so everyone, please, there's a poll going on now. So please take a minute or so to answer the poll, the questions in the poll. Okay, next question is from Oyinka and Teriba. I noticed that recent growth areas for the business seems to focus on consulting and logistics. It seems that cold storage, temperature controlled logistics are exploding in significance in a number of sectors, both domestically and internationally. NACO, for example, is investing in cold storage to facilitate domestic air cargo. What is the place for supply chain sovereignty, which you gave an example of, in a world where everyone is scrambling for a piece of the perishable logistics pie? What is the place for supply chain sovereignty? I assume what the person is asking is, how do you dominate in such a sector where everyone is scrambling for a piece of the pie? I think there's no sector anybody has monopoly on. Basically,
this is not recent. There have been, I think, over the years, there have been so many groups that have been trying to get into the supply chain space, especially when it comes to cold chain logistics. But if I'm to look at it, I don't think there's any company out there that, when it comes to, let's put the warehousing out of it, we're looking at trucking and cold chain logistics, I don't think there's any company out there that has the kind of experience and assets that we do when it comes to cold chain transportation. Let me use the word transportation. Now, there are many people that are trying to set up cold chain distribution networks. I've heard of, I recently heard of, I don't know what the company name is, but I believe it's somebody from the Okoya family in Lagos, I believe, who is setting up cold storage in, I think, multiple parts of the country and so on. I'm still yet to get the details. So yeah, lots of people are going into it. But for us, I think we have a niche in the sense that we have the assets. We have the assets to be able to provide this service. We have the experience so far in handling cold chain. Right now, anyone that wants to go into cold chain, if you have the money for it, fantastic. But I think it costs almost about somewhere between 150 to 200 million now to be able to get maybe a 10-ton truck that has cooling facilities. So there's a lot of investment involved in cold chain. The more, for me, the merrier. I don't think there's a limit in terms of the players, because right now almost everything is being transported in ambient temperature, things that should not be. Your vegetables, your meats, all of that is being transported in ambient temperature, and that should not be the case. So there's a big market for coaching. The more players, the better. If it gets too much, we'll start to merge and reduce the number again. So, so I think that's usually the life cycle for these kinds of things. If it gets too many, you guys now merge and reduce. So I don't know if, sorry, I keep saying I don't know if that answers the question, because I just try and process it and talk.
I think it's a very elaborate answer. And there's really no right and wrong. I think it's more right. So yes, and like you said, they get too many, they will merge, and at the end of the day, it's better for the consumer, because as more players come in, prices drop. So the price will end of the day be better for the consumer. So,
and if I can also ask, the only reason why even right now cold chain is a major issue is because there's no power.
Exactly.
There's no power. If power is constant and regular, you'll find that the demand for cold chain services is not as important, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
Not as important. Yeah, it's important, but not the way it is right now.
Yes, totally agree with you. Okay. So next question around finance and currency risk. With significant import needs amidst the depreciation of Naira revenues, how do you approach the task of balancing that equation? So basically, talking about your import needs, which happens in Forex and depreciating Naira, how do you manage that equation?
So, like I said, I think I answered this before. It depends on the kind of business you're in. For us, the best way to manage it, okay, so from the financial side, everyone will tell you, adopt just in time. Don't put all your money into inventory, buy as you need, make sure you have an efficient way of doing that, and so on. But what we've realized in our own business is, if you really want to provide affordable products, as right now there are supply chain risks out there with what is going on, the tariff war, the what do you call it, the shipping line disruptions that are going on. If you want to maintain your production for those into manufacturing, for me, I would say the only way to go is to stock up. Stock up on your products, on your inputs, lock down your price. You won't be going through all these variations in price increase as regularly as other people would. And that will guarantee your volumes, and you can project easier. But if you're doing just in time, it is difficult to manage that. It's always up and down, up and down, up and down, and you're living from hand to mouth. So left to me, I would say get the funding and stock up on inputs. That's the best way to manage manage the rising cost or variations in cost and all the uncertainties going on right now.
Always keep your ear to the ground, understand what's happening in the market.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's a good. Okay, Olawaju, I see you have your hands are up. Please drop your comments in the chat box, please. So moving on, we have the question about infrastructure and real estate. So Olubumi Debayo says, Nigerians are proud of your products. They have international standard quality, and is commending idea for the great job you have been doing. Could you touch on your real estate journey and impact of infrastructure, especially with the success from IDL? Yeah, basically your real estate journey. that's what the person is interested in hearing.
Okay, so that was a long that was a long time ago. That was probably early 2001, 2002, and it was mostly in Lagos. And really, all I was doing there was selling properties, doing lease rentals, and so on. So it wasn't maybe, I think what you're implying to is property development and so on. And well, I didn't go into property development. No, I didn't have. I mean, I was straight out of school. I didn't have the funding to start developing properties up and about. So it was more of partnering with people that wanted to sell their property or wanted to rent property. So that's the area. I played in. What was the second part again? Sorry.
So that's basically it's
Oh,
your real estate journey and impact of infrastructure. Basically, a real estate journey.
okay.
All right. Okay. So someone is asking that now understanding that dairy is a very huge value chain, how can youth entrepreneurs plug into this value chain? And what are you doing to encourage such entrepreneurs? I think I asked you that question early on. What areas you see? And for the benefits of this person, yes.
Yeah, if you're looking at plugging into the dairy value chain, there are multiple areas. Let me start with having your own small herd of cattle, where you are now producing milk and selling to a dairy manufacturer. That's one area to look at. Another area to look at is you may want to start to plant the fodder and feed for the animals, where you are now able to supply that to people that already have their own farms, their own animals. So basically, you're farming for the people, providing milk to the manufacturers. That's an area in which you can play in. You can provide AI services to farms out there to improve their herd, because as we all know, well, I won't say we all know, the local animals in Nigeria produce less than 1 liter of milk per day. With adequate feeding, yes, you can get up to 4 liters, but that's still very low compared to other countries. So what you can do is provide AI services to farms out there to improve the yield of their animals. So you can buy from us, other people, for instance, semen, if you are properly trained and so on, and you have your business of where you're selling semen and providing AI services to other farmers. There's the area of, you want to play in the dairy space, you can go into small manufacturing, where you are buying milk from other farmers and you're creating your own products, whether it is homemade Greek yogurt. If you want to start in a small scale, if you have the ability to go large scale, you have like a proper manufacturing setup where you're producing your dairy products and you're pushing that into the market. So there are so many areas in which you can play in the dairy space. So many areas to play in the dairy space. You can even buy some of our partners buy our products and resell. So it's open. The sky is the limit. It's just to look at what part of the value chain are you interested in? What part of the value chain do you have some kind of advantage based on maybe where you are, maybe your history in terms of education, skills that you know, and you just plug in. But at the same time, that commitment needs to be there. You are plugging into the agricultural space. So patience and all those things that I talked about earlier on need to be considered also.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for that. We have one more question from Olarawaju. Very, very insightful. What do you think can be done to make your product more affordable? And what can be done to further lower cost of production so as to have more market share? Do you do end of year sale? Because as for me, I buy the other. What do you do end of year sales during festivities?
Okay, so the perception out there is that farm fresh is expensive. Farm fresh, they are swimming to the bank. That is not the case. We are constantly trying to maintain quality. Price has not been the same. What was the price a few years ago to what it is now? Dollar not so long ago was 500, 600 to the naira. Now it is 1,000, around 1,005, 1,006 right now. And that is for items that you bring in yourself. Items that you buy from other people in Nigeria have factored in that increase in dollar and have multiplied the amount by 100% because they want to make their own profit. So things are extremely expensive, but in spite of that, for us, priority is to maintain quality. We're not going to cut it down and still charge a high price. No, we don't do business like that. So for us, the way forward is actually to bring in products that cater for whatever segment, whatever price segment we want to operate in. Develop new products that will fit into that space. That's, for me, that's the only way forward in terms of bringing down pricing.
And that's where the refresh brand has come in, which is
exactly
slightly more affordable. I love the Farm Fresh brand and the Refresh products. Every Christmas, I take it to the family parties in the hundreds, and the children and adults are just scrambling for it. It's funny where people leave the whiskeys and the rest, and you see people scrambling for the Farm Fresh and Refresh brand. Right. So yeah, it's a tough one doing business in the Nigerian market. And I commend you again and the ideal family for all you have been able to do.
Thank you.
Right. So it's 11:21. It's basically time to come to an end of the conversation. In a nutshell, we've spoken about your journey from acquisition 23 years ago till date. The defining moments in your journey that helped you transition from one industry to the other. The value chain where you play in, cold chain, manufacturing, agriculture, and now a logistics provider, one of the strong service providers in that space for cold chain in Nigeria. The challenges you've gone through, governance, managing funds, managing talents, and empowering Nigerian families through the service you provide. I'd like to hear any last words you may have, especially advice. Again, it's the same thing you've been saying, but last word and advice for entrepreneurs and partners that would like to jump on this business opportunity in Nigeria, even though it's tedious, but an opportunity all the same.
Advice I'll say it's if you want to get into the agri space, it's better to do it now. There's no better time than now, even with all the challenges going on. But it's to bear in mind that it is patience, it takes time, and it costs money. If you are trying to get quick returns, it's not going to happen. But if you are ready to wait and go through the test of time, it is going to be extremely rewarding later on. Food security is a major thing that the Nigerian government needs to focus on, and I believe that there'll be, going forward, maybe next year or so, we should start seeing maybe more incentives coming out to promote agriculture, food security area, and things along that area. even I think even just local production, manufacturing of different things. We should start seeing more should I say incentives or funding alternatives to cater for that. So now is the time to get into that space, so that when these things even start to come out, you have some kind of track record also to present. You can't go wrong with food. People need to eat. What you may say is, okay, maybe not yogurt if you consider yogurt to be luxury, but there are so many other areas that you can go into that I think would pay in the long run. And yeah, that's I would say that's my advice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheyin, for your time today.
Thank you.
From Triad Masterclass and all everybody here. Thank you. At this point, I'd like to invite Jumoke for any last words before we conclude the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, Odabo. Thank you for moderating a brilliant session. And thank you so much, Mr. Sheyin Roy Shekarri, for sharing your experience with us. I know it's a bit challenging. I think personally that one of the things that people don't know about the farm fresh yogurt brands and even the refresh brands is that these are actually products with probiotic qualities. And so even though they're products that we enjoy consuming, they also have extremely high health benefits for the consumer. And I think you sort of touched on it, but maybe that's something that needs to be highlighted in the brand communications. I think people really do need to realize that these things are actually very beneficial to the health of the consumer. And I happen to know some people that their doctors actually recommended that, you know, in terms of their gut health. So I do know that, yes, prices are high, but when we do a relative thing, and I'm not trying to market for Ideal, I'm just trying to state the obvious that when we do a relative comparison, we might find out that what we think is actually expensive is not that expensive. And that's not out of lack of sensitivity to the pains of the Nigerian consumer. But having said that, I want to say a very big thank you to you. I want to say thank you for honoring us on this conversation. I also want to say thank you for staying the tide of doing business in Nigeria despite all the headwinds. I mean, I asked the question about when you had the challenges with the whole, that did you ever consider giving up? And I think that that is a very interesting answer you gave, that it never for once came up. And I think that that's something we all need to adopt as Nigerians, where we're resilient, where we're focused, where we're dogged. Mr. Ali or Mrs. Ali Adebo Ali, I can see your hand going up. We're actually wrapping up the conversation, but if you will be so kind as to drop your question, we will try and get an answer across to you. We'd like to keep within time, and this is the dying moment. Please pardon us for not honoring that request. So really and truly, our thanks goes to you as one of the companies that are the poster child of Nigerian economic space. Thank you for keeping the flags flying, and we wish you and all the IDL team all the best as you continue to forge ahead in the business. We wish you greater successes, and thank you so much for coming on board. And thank you to everyone who's been on this call. We're so glad to have you. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the flag flying. Let's keep the nation growing. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy your Saturday. All the best. Thank you, Dabo. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.